Hello everybody and welcome to this video where we will be going over the civics questions for the naturalization test in order to obtain the US citizenship. So in this video, we will just be going over the possible questions that can appear on this test, and we will go over the answers, and the answers are actually directly from the government site, like what they recommend to answer. And then in addition to the answers, I will just give you guys a little insight to help you, for example, remember the answers or just like understand it better. So hopefully that to the point where you will pass the test. Okay? So what is this test? So this test is an oral test actually, so there's no multiple choice. That is important to consider when preparing for the test. And you will have to speak your answer. That's what oral means. And then 10 of a list of 100 questions will be asked. So there are a total of 100 possible questions in the civics test that range over a variety of subjects like US history and like government and all that stuff. And there's a total of 100 questions, but you will only be asked 10 of those questions. So 10 of those questions will be selected, which you will then be asked. And then you need to answer at least 6 of the 10 questions correctly to pass this portion of the test. So that means you need at least a 60%. And when it says pass this portion of the test, I believe the other test you need to pass is an English language test, which is not related to this. So, and then you always need, for the answers, you always need to make sure that you have the most current answer. For example, some of the questions are like, who is your current state governor and such? And obviously the governor changes from time to time. So you need to always know who is currently in office, okay? And then here I pulled this quote from the official government document. So it says that although the USCIS, which is the US Customs and Immigration Services, I believe, is aware that there may be additional correct answers to the 100 civics questions, applicants are encouraged to respond to the civics questions using the answers provided below. So as I stated before, for each of these questions, there will be kind of an official government answer that if you answer those questions with those answers, they are confirmed to be correct. And it says here that there could be other correct answers and such, but if you want to be safe, I would just go with the government answers, unless you are completely sure that your answer is correct. So now in this video alone, I'll be covering over the first kind of section of questions. That is the principles of American democracy. So when I say section, it is, I believe that there is no kind of quota that needs to be met. So they're basically just a set of categories of questions, and there are 100 questions in total, right? And I don't think that there needs to be necessarily a certain amount of questions picked from each category. So here, this part A, all these questions are related to principles of American democracy. However, there is not a specific amount of questions from this category that are required to be on the test. So for example, all 10 of your questions on the final civics test could be on the principles of American democracy, or none of them could be there. Okay? But in this video, I'll just be going over the first kind of section of questions so you know how to answer these questions if they do appear on your test, okay? So question 1, what is the supreme law of the land? And the answer here is the Constitution. Okay, so this one is, you should know this. This is probably one of the more easier questions, where in almost every country has a sort of constitution that is kind of like the rule book for the country, the guidelines, and that kind of explains the rules of the country and explains the laws and explains how the country is to be built. And this is what in the US they call the Constitution. And yeah, that is the supreme law of the land. So everything that happens needs to abide by the Constitution. So supreme law of the land means that it is number one, that you cannot break the Constitution. Everything needs to be abided by the Constitution. So just memorize that. The Constitution, it's like the rule book. It's like the manual for the country. So that's question number 1. This is one of the more easier ones. And now question number 2. What does the Constitution do? So I'll give you guys a little time to answer, you can just pause the video if you want to answer yourself. And I'll be going over the answers now. So it sets up the government, defines the government, and protects the basic rights of Americans. So remember the previous questions, I explained that the Constitution is sort of like the rule book and the manual. So that means that it sets up the government, so it kind of explains how the government must run, what the branches of government are, how you get elected and such, defines the government, like what the government is allowed to do in terms of like taxes, in terms of what Congress is allowed to do, what the president is allowed to do, what the legislators or what the Supreme Court. So that those both answers tie more into like how the Constitution is like the rule book. And then the third answer protects basic rights of Americans. There will actually be a question about this later, but the Constitution contains, for example, the Bill of Rights, which sets out the list of rights that each US citizen has, okay? So you must know that the Constitution is also the place where our rights are kind of listed out. So that is also important to notice, and there will actually be another question coming up soon about these basic rights in the Bill of Rights. All right, so next question. The idea of self-government is in the first three words of the Constitution. What are these words? So if you want to answer, pause the video, but the answer to this question is we the people. So this one is kind of like a catchphrase, I guess. You just need to memorize this one. Because yeah, so the Constitution, it's like a written document, and at the very beginning it says we the people, which kind of implies that the Constitution was written for the people. It's self-government. So it's not like a monarchy where just the king everything decides, but here this was one of the first democracies in the world where people could vote. So that's why it says we the people. It kind of emphasizes the self-government, which means just like the population can vote there and elect their leader and such, and legislators, and yeah. So this is another one that's kind of, you just need to memorize the phrase we the people. And then on to question 4. What is an amendment? So I'll give the answer to the question. A change to the Constitution or an addition to the Constitution. Yeah, so just memorize the amendment. So the Constitution initially was a was written in like the 1700s, right? And a lot has changed from the 1700s. So obviously, like they had slavery back then and whatnot, and other stuff that's are completely different from today's days. So therefore, they added changes to the Constitution in order to kind of keep up with the times, ensure rights for other people and stuff. And there's a lot of new just changes in the world throughout time, right? So therefore, amendments are made. So it's either a change to the Constitution or addition to the Constitution. For example, like the 19th Amendment, I believe, which gave women the right to vote, which would be, I guess, classified as both a change and addition to the Constitution. And yeah, I just memorize that whenever an amendment happens, it kind of states something new that is to be followed. So therefore, it can be viewed as a change or an addition to the Constitution. So now, next question. What do we call the first 10 amendments to the Constitution? So this one I kind of hinted at earlier. The first 10 amendments to the Constitution are the Bill of Rights. And these first 10 amendments were like ratified in the beginning of the Constitution, and it was as a sort of compromise in order for some people, they wanted to ensure that citizens have rights in case the government goes bad, in case the government goes kind of tyrant, that these Bill of Rights were ensured so that the people have a certain list of rights. And these are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, and they are called the Bill of Rights. Okay, so Bill of Rights is also an important term to remember. And yes, it just lists out some rights that we as citizens have in the USA. such as freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of right to bear arms, and like other stuff, right to speedy trial, and stuff like that. So it is also important to know if you want to become U.S. citizen, 10 years, it might be helpful to just look over what exactly the 10 amendments are, but it is very important to know that these are called the Bill of Rights, okay? So question 6, what is one right or freedom from the First Amendment? So the First Amendment is the one that lists a lot of specific freedoms that people can do, such as, let's see what there is: speech, religion, assembly, press, and petition the government. So this is also, so as you see in the question, you only need to list one. I think freedom of speech is pretty easy to um list, right? If someone asks you this question, what is one right or freedom from the First Amendment? I'd say most people would just say freedom of speech. But there's also religion, assembly, which means you can like group together, protest and stuff, come together as the people. Press, which is like newspapers and stuff, and like news, yeah. And then petition the government, which is like if you don't like anything, you can petition the government, which is like you can collect signatures, I think, and in order to change something that you don't like. So yeah, this is also you just need to memorize, but I think this is pretty easy to memorize. It's just freedom. Freedom of speech is pretty highly sought after in most countries anyways, so I'm pretty sure that if you get this question, you'll get it correct. So question 7, how many amendments does the Constitution have? So as we looked back before, amendment is like a change or addition to the Constitution. Although the Constitution originally had some amendments, but this is also kind of a number you need to memorize, and this number is 27. And yeah, you just need to memorize this number. Maybe it could be if you're watching this video in some years in the future. Maybe there's a 28th Amendment. I highly doubt it, however, because the last amendment was passed a long time ago, if I'm not mistaken. So there seems to be 27 amendments. Maybe there'll be 28 in the future when you watch this video. Most likely not. But yeah, for now, you just got to memorize this number, 27. And you do not have to memorize each of the 27 amendments, what they each are, because some of them are very kind of like insignificant, I'd even say, for average people. And I can't even name you a lot of them. So don't worry about memorizing them all. Just remember that there are 27 of them. Okay? All right, now question of 8. What did the Declaration of Independence do? So the answers are announced our independence, so the US independence from Great Britain, or declared our independence from Great Britain. So this one, so if you to become a citizen, you need to know that the US got its independence from Great Britain. It was formerly a colony in of the not United Great Britain, yeah, the monarchy there, and they didn't like it. So they kind of like broke up from them. And this Declaration of Independence, you can kind of like, at least how I was kind of like figuratively to look at it in like modern terms. It's kind of corny, but like a breakup letter or something, where the US kind of wrote this breakup letter and said that we are breaking up from Great Britain. We want to be free. And therefore, this Declaration of Independence is what announced the independence from Great Britain or declared independence from Great Britain. I think those answers are interchangeable. They're kind of like the same thing, kind of synonyms. But remember, these answers are from the official government document. So, and it's just said that we want independence from Great Britain and something. And then it's important to remember the Independence War came after the Declaration of Independence. So the USA at this time was still not a country. Oh, and there was a last bullet point. Sorry. Said that the United States is free from Great Britain. Already kind of like talks over the points that we went over. So it said that United States is free. Yeah. Basically the same answer anyways. So now question 9. What are two rights in the Declaration of Independence? So for this question, I believe that there are three kind of specific rights stated, and you need to name two of them. So The three answers I believe are going to come up: life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So this is, you might have heard this phrase before. I could be mistaken, but this phrase might be on like currency and stuff. Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Maybe that's life. Don't get it mistaken with life, liberty, and justice, because that's also a phrase from somewhere. Can't remember where, but life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So if you're given this question, you just need to answer with two of these answers, because these are the rights that are like specifically stated in the Declaration of Independence. If you want to go ahead and read that, then you can read it. I believe that this life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness appears kind of early on in the document, so maybe it might be worth checking out if you're into that stuff. But yeah, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Just memorize two of them. Probably life and liberty are the two easier ones to memorize, but pursuit of happiness is also kind of a unique thing, so it is also pretty easy to memorize, I'd say. So next question. What is freedom of religion? So this is more of like a definition question, so I think that it should be one of the more easier questions since you just list a definition, which is you can practice any religion or not practice a religion. So that's what freedom of religion means. And if you remember, freedom of religion is stated in the First Amendment, and this is basically what you're allowed to do. You can practice any religion, and might be worth, if you're asked this question, it might be worth to answer or not practice a religion. I don't know if they require both parts, but better safe than sorry, you know? So this is pretty easy question. Just need to state this definition. The next question. What is the economic system in the United States? Okay, so this might be a little more trickier one for some, maybe. Or maybe not. I don't know. And then this answer to this question is either capitalist economy or market economy, where basically there is free market entry where people can sell things they want. There is no like state subsidized, or not state subsidized, but like state owned. The market is not state controlled. People are like able to make their own decisions when buying and selling stuff. So capitalist economy, market economy. There's like a free market. So to help um kind of memorize this answer, if you're having trouble, just remember there's like the capitalist versus communist kind of ideas, and then like in the Cold War and stuff, the US heavily pushed the capitalist kind of idea. They wanted to spread it across the world, so they were heavily favored for the capitalist system. So capitalist is kind of a term synonymous with the United States, so maybe that will kind of help you memorize the term easier in case you're given this question. So just capitalist economy or market economy. So yeah, just memorize this. One of these two answers should do the job, I think. So question 12, what is the rule of law? So this one might be a little more trickier one, but you just need to think of like, break down like the terms. So the answers are: everyone must follow the law, leaders must obey the law, government must obey the law, and no one is above the law. So basically, rule of law, you just need to memorize this term as like, it literally says everyone must follow the law. You can just basically say that answer because everyone in this case includes leaders and government. So everyone must follow the law. There's no one above the law. So yeah, basically what the last point says, no one is above the law. Everyone must obey the law. Leaders must obey the law. Government must obey, yeah, all that stuff. That's what rule of law means. So that should actually be pretty easy to memorize. And that is actually the last question in this first part A, which is like the, what was it called? Rules of government or something like that. So that is it for today. That is the first 12 questions. Remember, there's 100 questions in total, so there are 88 more questions to come up that you would probably need to study on, but that is for another video. So this is the first kind of section of this series to go over the 100 questions. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please let me know. I'll make the rest ones. And yes, that is basically it for today. So, good job. If you got these questions right, great job. You're definitely going to pass. If you didn't, there's no reason to worry at all because you still can study and trust me, these questions are not that hard in the end of the day. And yes, good luck with your citizenship applications for those who are trying to get citizenship. I hope it works. And yes, thank you, thank you. So that is it for today. So see you guys next time then. And thanks for watching. Bye.